Hello, you found yourself again listening to the Keto Answers podcast. Good work. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Gustin, and this week we have Paddy Spence joining us. Paddy is the CEO and owner of the company Zevia, which has zero sugar beverages that you can pretty much find anywhere on the planet. Just doing phenomenal work. This might sound kind of like a paid sponsorship at times in this podcast. It is not the case. I just love Paddy's enthusiasm for reducing the world from sugar and replacing it with something else so that people can stair step from high calorie beverages to making healthier choices. So we chat about how he gets his kids and family off of sugar, how he creates products and why they're doing what they're doing. Just a phenomenal chat. Great guy. And you guys are going to love this episode. Before we get to the episode, I wanted to chat about our sponsor, Perfect Keto. Perfect Keto is all about making a ketogenic diet healthy and accessible. Whether you're reading all of our online guides or articles or enjoying Perfect Keto's exogenous ketones or any other keto-friendly products, everything you need to make keto work for you is at perfectketo.com. I know what you're thinking. Hey, aren't you the founder of Perfect Keto? Yep, that's right. And all of my insanely high standards have been put into making each and every product. My background as a functional medicine clinician helps me craft the cleanest and healthiest possible products and best information about the ketogenic diet. Head on over to perfectketo.com to learn anything you need to know about the ketogenic diet. And if you've never tried any of our products before, feel free to use the code KETOPODCAST for 20% off your first order. With that being said, let's get into the show. Paddy, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Anthony.
So you have a very interesting story and a very interesting company. Let's just start with a brief overview of kind of who you are and what you're doing now, and then we'll kind of peel back the layers a little bit after that.
Sure. My name is Paddy Spence. I'm the CEO of Zevia, and we're a company that makes zero-calorie beverages. So I've been in the natural foods business for, 26 years. I started way back in the early 90s at Kashi Cereal, and I've gone through a lot of different businesses since then. Along the way, almost 18 years ago, my wife and I actually went off of sugar and changed my life. We can talk about that. But so I'm a no sugar guy. I'm an athlete, competitive athlete, definitely not a professional. And I'm a dad of a 6 and an 8-year-old daughter. So
got it.
I got a lot on my plate.
So it's Zevia, not Zevia.
Well,
Stevia,
the
Stevia.
Gentleman who brought Stevia to the United States, Jim May, called it Stevia. So who am I to say? I call it Zevia, but a lot of people call it Zevia.
I always get corrected online on the internet. People like to patrol that a little bit.
Yeah.
So sugar-free for 18 years, you said?
That's right.
What was the initial thing that prompted that removal from your diet?
Well, it was a real epiphany. I thought that I was a healthy guy. So this is back in 2000. I was doing triathlons. I was in the natural foods business, had been almost for 10 years. And my wife was having some digestive issues. And she said, let's take a food journal for a week and just see what our diet looks like. I thought I knew. I thought it was healthy. Long story short, I realized I was literally getting 250 grams of sugar a day, all from stuff that I bought at natural food stores. A couple Odwalla smoothies, a couple Cliff bars, sugar in my tea, 1,000 calories a day just from sugar. And so we actually went off of sugar cold turkey in the summer of 2000.
Was there anything that you noticed was detrimental or you had symptoms from having that high sugar content?
Well, certainly. I mean, a couple of things were happening. I was having these insane spikes of energy and crashes throughout the day. And, anyone who consumes sugar or, the best is watch a toddler when they eat birthday cake, right? They go nuts and then they fall asleep. So I was going through that cycle probably 20 times a day. So that was the biggest thing. It was just really uneven energy levels. I was always tired. I felt bloated. I just didn't feel good. And the way we did it was kind of crazy. We went out to a cabin in the woods. Nearest grocery store was 15 miles away. And we just went cold turkey. And my body actually went into shock. I was laid out on the couch for a couple of days, broke out into hives, head to toe. And I was just kind of detoxing from all that sugar. And the only thing that would kill the cravings at that time for me was literally 2 to 3 pounds of meat. Okay. Drinking a lot of water, eating a lot of meat. And, this is back in 2000. We didn't know much about ketosis back then, but right. I was doing unknowingly probably that carnivore diet that was likely to throw me into ketosis.
Right. Interesting. And so what were the first things after you got over that spell of withdrawal? What were the first things that you noticed were improved after cutting out this?
Well, energy levels. My energy was just so much more even throughout the day. I wasn't suffering from digestive issues, but my wife, who was, those cleared right up. And, I lost weight. I wasn't trying to. Like I said, I was, eating 2 to 3 pounds of meat a day, but I still lost 10 pounds in a month. It was crazy. And so since then, that was 18 years ago, and we've been able to maintain that. Certainly we've fallen off the wagon, but the longer you do this kind of thing, as you know, the easier it gets. And it's just had a profound impact in terms of me, my athletics, my ability to focus throughout the day. And, Anthony, you talk about the 4 pillars. For me, the foundation of each of those pillars is no sugar.
Right. I mean, it impacts every area of your life, clearly.
Absolutely.
So when you remove this stuff, what did you add back in? And was there anything that replaced all this? Because it sounds like you're eating a lot of this type of food, a lot of these natural foods. Was it difficult to find replacements right off the bat?
Well, so what we did initially is we really focused on a lot of vegetables. Again, back in 2000, we weren't trying to do this for ketosis, so we didn't know about carbs, but we knew that simple carbs were going to be contributing to our sugar content. So we stopped eating white rice. We stopped eating pasta. We stopped eating a lot of those, certainly potatoes, a lot of steamed vegetables with no salt, no seasoning, lean meat, poultry, fish. And really that was kind of our diet. For me, where was I getting my sugars? I try to keep total sugar to 50 grams a day. Not added sugar, total sugar. So glass of milk, a banana, that's kind of halfway there.
Right.
So those kind of are the things that, if you want to call them indulgences, a banana's an indulgence. Granola, low sugar granola with milk is an indulgence. Those are the sugar sources for me, but otherwise it's pretty clean. Yeah. A lot of nuts, a lot of oils, a lot of olive oil, that kind of thing.
So you're probably in ketosis then a moderate amount of time. If you're limiting to about 50 grams, doing a lot of fats and healthy foods like this.
That's exactly right.
Is there anything that you noticed over a long period of time, or changes in obviously not just energy that immediately improved? What about longer term? Was there anything that maybe you could have a performance?
Well, certainly from an endurance standpoint. I mean, I'm 51, so I wouldn't expect to be as fast as I was when I was 21, but I'm definitely stronger, and I'm pretty close. Right. I've done VO2 max tests, and my VO2 max is pretty much where it was when I was in college, actually better than. So from that standpoint, performance-wise, it's been huge. I think in terms of mental focus, I think that's a big one. We talk so much about the obvious physical effects of sugar, obesity, diabetes, et cetera, but we know that sugar causes inflammation at the cellular level. How could that possibly lead to clear thinking when you really dig into that? So I think, mental clarity is a huge one that people often ignore, but there's no doubt that's something I've experienced.
Okay. So what prompted you to get going with Zevia then?
Well, exactly. I mean, you're living this lifestyle, and for me, I had completely eliminated carbonated beverages, really, except for unflavored sparkling water. And what my wife and I actually used to do at home is we'd take some sparkling water, fresh ginger, a little bit of lemon, and liquid stevia. Well, that's ginger ale. Right. So I saw Zevia on the shelf at Whole Foods, and I thought, wow, I'm a sample of one, but I would drink this stuff. In fact, I'm already making it at home. And so back in 2010, bought the company. It was a tiny startup at the time, and we've been really off and running ever since.
Awesome. And what has the goal of the company been since that point? Is it just to provide people alternatives who are trying to go sugar-free and have some of the benefits that you had early on?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, as you know, one of the biggest challenges for someone who's trying to pursue a ketogenic diet or a low sugar diet is, where the heck do I start? Because when you do that food journal, you realize almost everything you're eating and drinking has sugar. So for me, Zevia was a way to provide those alternatives and a really easy first step. 47% of the added sugar that people get is from beverages. So if you just cut that out, you're doing great to start.
Right. And I think that I mentioned before that I've used you guys' product for a long period of time. And even myself, I wasn't necessarily on tons of sugar, but I mean, this is such a momentum thing that you said. Like, the choices get easier as you go along. And now, I mean, it's much easier for me to make different decisions about, just drinking water or something like that. But having so many SKUs that you guys have, so many products where people can then make a decision that's a little bit better than what they were doing before, and like going in the right direction, and having this, I mean, the ingredient panel you guys have is phenomenal. I mean, there's no weird stuff in it. There's nothing you can't pronounce. I mean, do you want to go talk a little bit about that philosophy of what you guys' products
Yeah,
are?
I mean, and in part, it's a bigger philosophy for myself, for my family, and for the company, which is continuous improvement, right? I wasn't born not eating sugar.
Right.
I got there, and I'm a lot better now than I was 10 years ago. And similarly with Zevia, when I bought the company, we didn't have as clean ingredients as we had now. We had 12 grams of erythritol. Sugar alcohol, it's better than sugar, but it's not so good for ketosis. We had caramel color. And so over the last 8 years, we've gradually just continued to improve our ingredients to where, to your point, we've got 4 simple plant-based ingredients now. It's water, it's stevia, natural flavor, and citric acid, which regulates pH. So super simple. And I think that whole continuous improvement thing and just grinding away and getting a better tasting and a cleaner product on and on and on has been, huge for us at the business, but really it's what I'm all about at home.
Good. Can you tell me a little bit about stevia in general? I'm a big fan of it. We use it in our products, obviously, but I get so much feedback saying that it's an artificial sugar or that it's bad for you or that it's terrible. I'm sure you're the person here that can dig in on this most.
Absolutely. Please what I start with is this, it's a plant in the sunflower family. Okay. 200 times as sweet as sugar with no calories and no impact on blood sugar. Okay, so let's just stop right there. No one's going to argue that if you took that plant and you chewed the leaf, that's going to be a good thing. Okay, then where people start to object or wonder is they say, well, you can put a bunch of nasty chemicals in it and make it not natural. Well, that's true. We can do that with sugar too. We can do that with honey. Mm-hmm. We can do that with maple syrup. And so, the way that we process our stevia, it's a non-GMO project verified variety of stevia. It's basically using water as an extraction. You make a big tea, you spray dry that. There's some ethanol, organic alcohol that's used in that extraction. There's no methanol. There's no nasty chemicals. This is as pure as honey, as pure as maple syrup. Those are both refined sweeteners from nature. So stevia is very similar. From a scientific standpoint, I think, we're very careful to not make health claims associated with stevia, but I can tell you, as a guy who's been using it for 18 years, I've felt health benefits from it. And I think there's emerging research starting to show that, in fact, in some cases, stevia can reduce blood sugar for people. So I think there are some health benefits that are still maybe jury's out from a scientific standpoint, but this is a plant-based sweetener, super clean, no impact on blood sugar. And the other thing I tell people is the American Pregnancy Association, when my wife was pregnant, we did a lot of research. Don't ever consume saccharin. Okay, that makes sense. Aspartame, okay, in moderation, but what's moderation? Stevia, safe for use.
Right.
So, I mean, it's an amazing ingredient, and it's changed a lot of people's lives, and it's changing the world's health.
Yeah, and this is what I don't get. It's like it is literally a plant.
Yeah, it's literally a plant. Yeah. It's funny when people talk about, well, gosh, could it be bad for you? I ask them one question: could sugar be bad for you? Hell yes, right? No one's going to dispute that sugar is linked to obesity, linked to diabetes, and increasing evidence that it's linked to a whole range of chronic diseases. So from that standpoint, we got something that we know is bad for you versus a plant that has thousands of years of use that doesn't have any evidence that it's bad for you. I think that's a pretty easy choice.
And I think another thing that I get a lot of pushback on is that there are people who say, oh, well, I would like to get people off of anything sweet and retrain their palate. What I've noticed to work best for that is just eating all real food instead. And so if you're eating processed food, then your palate gets all messed up. When you start eating real food, it's not like you crave a massive amount of sweetener and you're getting your fix the same way you're addicted to sugar. It's a completely different pathway. And just eating real food fixes a lot of that, and you don't have the crazy cravings anymore.
Absolutely. So when people have that concern, I tell them 2 things. To your point, Anthony, consume sweet products after a meal, right? You're full, and that's not going to be an issue. But the second one is that, in fact, stevia almost never achieves the same sweetness level as sugar. So, or artificial sweeteners for that matter. So drink a classic Coke and drink a Zevia. The Zevia is less sweet. Drink a Diet Coke, drink a Zevia. The Zevia is less sweet. Okay, so stevia will absolutely provide the sweetness that we want. What's interesting, though, is it allows our palate to adjust to a lower level of sweetness. Mm-hmm. So my kids go to a birthday party, they lick the icing off the cupcake, and they're done. They're like, Dad, I've had plenty of sugar. And it's because they've adjusted to a slightly lower level of sweetness by using stevia. So, I mean, if anything, stevia helps you adjust to a lower level of sweetness and reduces your demand for sugar.
Right. What do you get for an answer when people say that it tastes metallic or tastes weird? Or is that just a taste bud thing? What is your response on that?
I think it's a taste bud thing. I mean, I typically tell people, to any novel food, there's a little bit of adjustment. In our case, after probably your fourth can of Zevia, you're in and you say, gosh, yeah. And you know what? There's always going to be a person or two who say, gosh, I'm allergic to sunflower. Well, probably don't drink stevia, or I just don't like the taste. But for the vast majority of people, this is an amazing solution that frankly is life-changing in my case.
Right. And if you can make that switch from sugar or carbs to a stevia containing product, I think that's a huge win.
Absolutely.
And like I said, we use it in most of our products as well. I mean, it's something that, we have the same process that you guys are using. So, yes, producing things with chemicals is never good, but like you said, it's not, you're taking a plant and basically making a tea of it and then making that into a powder.
That's exactly right. And I think one of the things that's so cool that I've seen in the last few years is, products like yours and Zevia are foundations of a ketogenic diet, but now we're starting to see other products that are sweetened with stevia with the goal of reducing sugar. And you know what? Not everyone is going to be on the keto diet. And so for those folks, I'd rather see them eat less sugar than tons of sugar. So things like Oikos 000 yogurt. It's got 5 grams of sugar. It's incredible. Lily's chocolate. It's got no sugar. Zevia, your products. So, I think we're seeing that wave, really cross North America and the world where people are saying, less sugar is better in every single case.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to touch on too is that you said you were in the natural food space. You were eating all these products, like the Adwala juice and the Cliff bars, noticing that a lot of stuff actually piles up. This is one of the things that really bothers me about the quote unquote natural food space is that foods are marketed as natural or whole or good for you, but in reality, they're not, and they can be quite damaging. An example that I was playing the other day, my girlfriend looked at this Kind bar, and she was saying how this is great that they have these on the plane. And I looked at the ingredient list, and it had just ridiculous amounts of sugar, tons of processed food ingredients, canola oil, but yet marketing in the front that it's good for you and you should be doing good for yourself. It's just, any opinion on that? And
yeah,
marketing in the natural health food space.
It's a great point, and I think frankly, it's the Achilles heel of the natural foods movement. It's starting to change, but historically, what we've seen is that natural products have been marketed based on the absence of negatives, right? I don't have artificial preservatives. I don't have artificial flavors. I don't have artificial colors, et cetera. No MSG or whatever. That's great. You can create a product with a lot of those negatives eliminated. But if you don't think of sugar as a bad ingredient, you're probably going to have a lot of sugar in there. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think the awareness is increasing. And so you're starting to see, again, things like condiments with reduced sugar. And fortunately, there's so much public pressure on food companies nowadays. I just saw an article about a beverage company. They had launched 3 months later, they're reformulating to reduce their sugar, right? The consumer will not let you get away with high sugar products today, no matter how great they taste.
I think that's a good point. I just think it's unfortunate that you can use so many marketing tactics to sneak in bad stuff, or if it's organic cane sugar or organic something else, then they market it as an organic product, and people automatically think it's healthy.
Well, exactly, and I think it's unfortunate that I could dump 20 teaspoons of sugar into Zevia, and it'd be organic tomorrow. Would it be good for you? Probably not.
Right. Or natural, because it's natural cane sugar, things like this. There's just different marketing tactics that companies in the natural food space have, and I'm sure you'll be going to Expo West as well this weekend. And there's always really cool products that I see that I never thought would exist before. I get super pumped about, but then there's also other products that I think people just miss the boat on, like putting weird ingredients in the stuff and calling it natural is just not,
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges is we're in a world where people try to do everything. I'm going to be a vegan, I'm going to follow a paleo or keto diet, and I'm going to have no oils and only organic. Well, good luck, right? And so what we typically tell people is, start with one baseline thing. In my case, it's sugar. And then everything else will follow from that. And so I think a lot of these well-intentioned products just aren't thinking about the bigger picture, aren't thinking about public health. They're thinking about what does a vegan want or what does a gluten-free person want. And so it's that more macro perspective, which is we know sugar is bad for everyone. Why would you use it?
Right. That's a good point. So looking at, you're talking about you have just 2 daughters?
Yes.
How is this getting, and one of the biggest questions I get is, how do I get my family on board with this type of change? If I want to make a lifestyle change, go to keto, reduce sugar. Because, I mean, a lot of times people eat based on what their kids eat, which is
absolutely
sad because most of that industry is all marketed towards getting kids hooked on sugar at an early age.
Well, it's interesting. So, a lot of it is about education. But at the same time, you can educate your family all you want. If you're telling them what to do, that's not going to go so well. And so in our family, education's important, but really it's about empowerment. It's about even my 6-year-old. She's making her choices in terms of what she wants to eat. That doesn't mean, Sage, have anything you want. What that means is, hey, you want a snack? Would you like the banana or would you like the agave lollipop? And both have 8 grams of sugar or whatever. Empower her to make those choices. And similarly, and this is what's fascinating, is when I allow my kids to make these choices, they will never choose a sugary beverage over a sugary food, right? It's time for a treat. Do you want this lemonade juice box with 20 grams of sugar or a single serve ice cream with 20 grams of sugar? Easy choice. No kid in their right mind will pick the juice box. And so it's allowing the kids to make those decisions, not saying you can never have sugar, but saying you've got this budget and you can spend it how you want.
Interesting. Do they ever fight back on the amount of the budget?
Like any budget, you overspend on some days. I mean, 50 grams is a tough target if you're going to 2 birthday parties.
Right.
We had a 2 birthday Sunday last week. Well, guess what? We went over. But when Monday came around, I guarantee you we were below the 50 grams. And so it's about that long-term baseline and keeping that steady versus freaking out that you blew the budget one day.
It sounds like you guys had some natural feedback with, training or educating about. You said they had frosting before and it was, too much or too sweet just because their palate has adjusted. How do you educate around the budget to kids? Like, what have you found to be successful?
Well, I mean, my daughters just love to read labels. And so it's this kind of discovery process, right? And, we call it the process of being a sugar sleuth. Nice. So Sage, pick up that product and tell me, how many grams of sugar it has. And she goes, oh, Dad, it's got 0 carbohydrates and 0 sugars. So, it's that starting to understand that stuff and their consciousness has really developed in that regard. And so they're aware of what foods are really sugary and what aren't. And, one of my favorite stories was a couple years ago, my daughter was only 4, my younger daughter, we were in a store and she goes, Dad, that's Zevia. And her older sister said, Sage, that's not Zevia, that's soda. And it's that, they make the distinction. There's soda, not so good. There's Zevia, that's good.
Awesome. And how is that translating to other food choices? Obviously the beverage line, but I mean, are you trying to push them more towards just real whole foods, or is it, obviously there's a lot of packaged foods in what's marketed to kids.
Yeah. Certainly that. I think, my kids are very conscious of, protein versus carbs, which is interesting. So, one of the things that we found in our family is protein kills sugar cravings, right? So, for my kids, for a snack, turkey jerky, Whole Foods 365 jerky. It's organic, it's extremely low in sugar, and it's a really filling protein snack. That's great. Glass of whole milk. Yeah, it's got some natural sugars in it, but really filling, and it's going to take the place of a sugary snack. And so what we've seen is those kind of protein-oriented foods have become favorites for my kids because they know it's going to fill them up. They won't get the tummy ache that they get if they eat too much sugar. And it's really working for us.
Right. I think jerky and macadamia is like one of my go-to travel snacks. And I don't know why anyone would ever need something sweet when this like such a delicious little snack.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things, and it gets back to a bigger picture question, which is how do you view food? What's the relationship of food to your life? And for me, honestly, food is fuel.
Right.
I want to fuel my athletic activity. I want to fuel my focus and work performance. And I want to fuel the time with my family. And so I will always pick a food that's going to fuel me versus a food that will allow me to indulge. And I think that's just a fundamental philosophical difference. I was recently with an amazing athlete, the UFC fighter, Nate Diaz. And, Nate is a guy who follows a really clean diet, very low sugar. And one of the things he said to me is he said, people tell me, I go to McDonald's because they don't have any time. He said, every convenience store has water and cashews. that reflects a very different attitude toward food.
Right.
Food is going to keep this machine going and performing at its highest level, not, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing I've tasted and I'm indulging.
So you said you were a competitive athlete, not a professional one, but competitive. What are you doing for athletics right now?
So I used to do a lot of triathlons in the 80s and 90s, and now I've kind of moved into martial arts more. So I've practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a long time. I train in Muay Thai kickboxing. I did do a triathlon last year for my 50th, first time in 15 years.
How'd it go?
Don't recommend it.
You survived.
Well, I survived. I guess I would just say, if you're going to do triathlon, it's a good idea to run, bike, or swim sometimes, because it's hell if you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai kickboxing is my main stuff. It's like a ketogenic diet. Those are long-term sports.
Right.
You learn jiu-jitsu over decades, not in a year. And so that's what makes it fun. It's all about just gradual, continuous improvement. I'm not a great athlete, but I've learned to be a better athlete.
So how are you using food to fuel your performance in those things?
Again, it's about, for me, protein snacks are huge. I sometimes struggle to get enough nutrition because I'm picky. If there's bad choices, I'm going to eat zero. And so it's about just making sure I have enough fuel heading into competition. I did something either last year or 2 years ago. I competed in the Pan Ams of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, big tournament. I drank a strawberry Zevia right before going on the mat. And, I'm nervous. My mouth is dry. And I'm like, I'm going to give this a shot. People are looking at me like I'm kind of crazy. I got this pink can of soda I'm drinking right before competing, but it really helped and I felt great. So, nutrition plays an important role in any athlete's life. And I'm not a professional, as I said, but I find the same thing.
Interesting. So I know jiu-jitsu is a little bit more explosive. Are you fueling up with carbohydrates around that? Or you try and go pretty low, just keeping your overall sugar budget the way it is?
Yeah, I don't.
Strategy that you're using around the workout.
I don't really tweak my diet to add more carbs. Like in a 2.5 hour triathlon, sure. Toward the end, I'm going to have a carbohydrate gel or something like that. And those are the instances where sugar is a useful drug, right? Sugar is a drug. If we abuse it, it's terrible for us. But if we use it in the last 15 minutes of a triathlon, guess what? It's going to work.
Right. Interesting. Have you tried any like low carb ketogenic approach to a triathlon? I know there's been one in the last 15 years. So
I should. Yeah. No, I think, one of the things I find with endurance athletics is, you need fuel, but it's tough to find something you can eat repetitively over many hours. So my wife and I did a 200-mile bike ride in the mountains in upstate New York last year. Yeah. Hours and hours. How many damn Epic bars can you eat? Right. And so that is a challenge over long periods of time, is finding nutrition that will be satisfying that you're not getting sick of.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that now going into ketone esters and things like that can raise your ketone levels, or maybe MCT oil, and that can sometimes cause digestive issues. So there's definitely a challenge of fueling long-term athletes through a ketogenic diet, just because the products for carbohydrates have existed for so long that it's super easy to get the gels and all this other stuff. But I think that's where we need to do some work in really making products for people with endurance performance in mind.
Well, exactly. And probably just as importantly, making sure that people know those high carb, high sugar things that you're going to use in the last 10 minutes of a race are not for civilian use, right?
Right.
That power bar that I used to literally mold around my handlebars in the 80s, that was great during a race. Don't eat that in regular life because it's full of sugar and carbs.
Right. And your cells are just responding differently. So
exactly.
You're at this glycogen debt and you need to fill that back up, especially if you're not used to running completely on fats, then you're going to need to use that in a different way. So tell me a little bit more about who's kind of gravitating now. Have you seen a shift now that the keto movement has been really hot the last couple of years, going towards your brand? Or is it people, like you said, that just trying to get rid of sugar?
Well, I think, keto is in the forefront of the low to no sugar movement. So in that sense, the keto community has really embraced Zevia. And, when you start looking at choices, one of the things that's fascinating is there's a lot of stuff out there that purports to be better for you, right? And again, I've learned a lot. I used to have 12 grams of erythritol in a can of Zevia. Well, that's not going to work for keto. Yeah. So we are one of the few, if not the only, 100% stevia sweetened. We have no other sweeteners in our product, and as such, we're really suitable for the keto diet. So yeah, we've seen a real surge in the business as people have discovered the brand, Because again, there aren't alternatives out there. You don't want to be drinking Diet Coke. You sure as heck don't want to be drinking classic Coke.
Right. And so what are the things about erythritol that you noticed have not been beneficial?
Well, I think erythritol, in large amounts especially, causes a lot of people gastric distress. So, imagine when we started out, we had 12 grams in a can. I'm drinking 10 cans a day. And people used to laugh, like, you must have a cast iron stomach, because a lot of people, that would just tear them up. So as we reduced erythritol, we found that people were embracing the product more. And now the stevia plant, and not to get too technical on stevia, but there's about a dozen sweetening compounds in the leaf. Reb A is the one that people know the most, but there's Reb B and Reb D and Reb M, et cetera. And by combining those different sweetening compounds, or glycosides as we call them, we've been able to get a more rounded sugar-like sweetness with no sugar alcohols. And so that's been a huge advance for us, because we have a better tasting product that is suitable for the ketogenic diet.
Interesting. And so I'm actually one of the people, when people complain about stevia being like just off tasting and not great, that's how I feel about erythritol and sugar alcohols. I don't know. There's something about them.
There's some weird properties. I don't know if you're aware of the thermogenic properties of erythritol, but what that means is it draws heat. And so, if you have a tank, a few thousand gallons of soda, when you add the erythritol, it gets cold. Very strange. So sometimes you'll feel this kind of cooling effect from beverages with a lot of erythritol, and that's how I can instantly tell they have too much. Interesting.
So I didn't know you guys had this energy product. So you brought me a little gift here. So thank you.
Absolutely.
What other products? You guys obviously have the baseline. What else do you guys offer for people who, and this is what obviously we're passionate about, is providing alternatives for people, whether that be, collagen products, protein powders. We're working on bars and drinks and everything that way as well. What do you guys all have for solutions of people trying to make a ketogenic diet sustainable or successful? Yeah,
great question. So, when we started out with Zevia, it was soda. And one of the things we learned along the way is that soda has a number of different usage occasions and needs from a consumer standpoint. So some people are drinking it for refreshment. For other people, it's hydration, maybe after a workout. We make caffeinated sodas, so that was all about kind of energy. And then a lot of people were using our sodas as a mixer at the end of the day for unwinding. And so we actually created product lines to address each of those. So we have a sparkling water line, just a tiny bit of sweetness, lighter flavor, and that's all about hydration. We have, as you noted, the energy line.
Is that kind of like let's say like a La Croix or something like that?
If it tasted better. Yeah, exactly. So, one of the funny things, right? Black cherry, right? Eat a black cherry, it's got a little sweetness. Right. And so when you have a La Croix and it has no sweetness, it's a little jarring to the palate. And so our product has a tiny bit of sweetness, so it really tastes like the natural fruit. The energy product line, really different in that it's got caffeine, 120 milligrams, but it has no supplements. Right. And so how much taurine should I get? I don't know. And if I'm eating supplements like in your product line, I'm not sure I need a ton of other sources of supplementation. Right. And so we said, let's make the cleanest energy we can, 120 milligrams of caffeine, no supplements. And then we have a mixer line, ginger beer, tonic water, because who needs 50 grams of sugar in your mixed drink?
Awesome. Any new stuff coming out that you guys are going to show us?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to announce we have a really very cool product line, our first USDA organic line and our first non-carbonated line. We're making 8 iced teas, ready to drink teas. And I grew up drinking tea. I love tea. I don't love 50 grams of sugar. I certainly don't love aspartame. So this is really kind of expanding our product line to that kind of contemplative, reflective, sophisticated tea occasion, which is so amazing.
You got any matcha coming out?
Yeah, that's next on the list. What's so cool about this product line is when we think about the lifestyle that you and I are leading, what else do I have that has calories that I wish didn't? And someone said something to me really interesting recently. They said, no beverage should have calories unless it's delivering protein or alcohol. It sounded so extreme. Yeah. And then I started thinking, I was like, they're kind of right. Dairy products have protein. Okay. Coconut water, that's an occasional treat in my household. Right. And so, that's kind of something I've started to live by. If it doesn't have protein or alcohol, it shouldn't have calories.
One of the things about coconut water that I've thought of is unless I am getting the water out of the coconut, I don't deserve it. And that's just the way I approach it. I used to chug that stuff before. There's been some times where I've gone in and out of ketosis, and over the past few years, I started doing it in undergrad like 8 to 10 years ago. But in the past couple of years, I was doing CrossFit pretty heavily like 3 years ago, and I was just chugging coconut water after my workouts, but I'd feel like sick to my stomach. after a couple of times, like it was too much sugar.
Well, and to your point, it's kind of the same way I feel about orange juice. Orange juice is the lazy way to consume fruit, right? You've gotten someone else to squeeze it, and by the way, take out all the pulp and the fiber and the other good stuff, and you're just mainlining sugar.
Right. You'd never drink a glass of orange juice if you had to squeeze by hand.
Well, exactly. Here's a crazy statistic. Okay, 2 glasses of orange juice have 100 grams of sugar. That's 6 jelly donuts, right? Every 10-year-old in the world can drink 2 glasses of orange juice. I'd like to see him eat 6 jelly donuts, right? You can consume absurd amounts of sugar in fruit juice because, frankly, you're not doing the work, like you said, of peeling the fruit and getting the good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and just think about that in terms of maybe like a sweet potato or like a more of a starchy vegetable. Like you're not going to be able to eat, 15 sweet potatoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's where beverage is so dangerous because you can consume really scary amounts of sugar in a way that, that just the mass of food and fiber and pulp wouldn't allow you to with real fruit.
Exactly. And the most delicious part of a coconut is the meat. Come on. Let's
Absolutely. Be real. Well, and there's nothing more incredible than jamming a straw into a fresh coconut, right? I mean, that's magic.
Yeah. I just remember when I was in Thailand, it was just like I wasn't chopping it, but it was getting chopped for me. But I would essentially just want to get done with drinking the water, so I could just eat all the actual meat of the coconut.
Well, exactly. And I mean, to use an extreme example, I remember being in Jamaica and side of the road, machete sugarcane stalk, right? Well, I deserved that. I chewed that damn thing and I got some sugar from it. But to your point, I did the work. And can you imagine if all the sugar we consumed was actually chewing sugarcane, we'd consume a lot less sugar.
How was it? Was it actually sweet? I've never had sugar.
So good. Before. Oh my God. It's insane.
Well, it's like, it's because isn't it kind of like a bamboo consistency?
It is. It's like a bamboo meets celery.
Interesting.
Right. So it's got these fibers and stalks and you chew it and the juice comes out and then you're not swallowing it. You're chewing it and you got this chewed up strand of sugar cane. But I mean, it tastes incredible and you did the work and you got a lot less sugar than drinking a Coke.
Interesting. Do you know roughly how many grams of?
Not off the top of my head, but again, it's like the jelly donut example. I'm not sure you could consume enough sugar cane to get 48 grams of Coke, sugar that's in a can of Coke.
Interesting. One of the stats that I read recently was that blood glucose, so the sugar going on in your bloodstream, the average amount in a person is 5 grams of sugar. And so if you think about, if you're drinking something that has 10, 15 grams, you're tripling the amount of sugar that is already in your bloodstream, tripling it. It's
incredible. And, as a parent, where it gets really scary is that kids drink adult amounts of sugar, right? So if I drank 2 glasses of orange juice, I'm 180 pounds. Okay. My 6-year-old who's 45 pounds, can you imagine the impact on her pancreas, on her bloodstream? I mean, talk about insulin response. You're just mainlining sugar and that kid's 45 pounds. So and that's where it gets really scary. And so as a parent, I feel like I have this responsibility to get our family on the right track.
Yeah. So what exactly are the foods that you're eating? So we talked a little bit before about the kind of the 4-pillar type of thing. So let's go through that and how you're approaching it. And maybe if you have any advice or tips to give to people listening. So nutrition, obviously, sugar budget.
It's all about sugar budget. It's all about high protein, low carb, high fat. We use a lot of MCT oil. I eat a ton of cashews. We use a lot of oils. We started using ghee. That's something we didn't have butter in the house for 15 years. And to your and my earlier conversation, fat bombing has really changed the whole concept of the ketogenic diet. And so we're doing a lot more.
18 years ago, that just doesn't exist.
So no, exactly.
You took away carbohydrates and sugar, and then
there wasn't much left.
Yeah, you don't put anything back in besides protein.
Exactly.
Right. And so that looks a lot like meat, vegetables, fat, like you said.
Correct.
Any advice or tips that you give people or a challenge on nutrition?
I like to start with the basics and then, just kind of grind it down from there. So the basics or the foundation of that pillar for me is no sugar. And that starts with beverage. And then, I'm fat bombing when I can. Every snack, I'm trying to do that. So a lot of cashews. I love cashews, love almonds. From a condiment standpoint, we've tried to kind of grind down on that. Ketchup, one of the biggest sugar sources in an average dinner. So, we exercise extreme portion control when it comes to ketchup. You don't get all you can eat. You get how much I gave you.
Right. Smart. And so we talked about movement, how you were doing more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, things like that.
Yep.
What does that look like other than those specific sports?
Other than that, I also do Kundalini yoga.
Okay.
One of the things I found is as I get older, pliability and flexibility is so important for injury. I had a couple of injuries in the last couple of years. I tore my pec, had surgery, tore my bicep, had surgery. So flexibility is super important. So I do yoga. I try to run sometimes. And, the type of explosive movements from CrossFit are amazing. Got some scheduling challenges to fit that into my workout routine, but absolutely love that stuff too.
Great. What about stress reduction for yourself?
So, mindfulness, I think, is really important. And the more time that I spend and the older I get, the more important it becomes, especially in this, crazy overscheduled world we live in. So, I try to do 3 to 5 minutes of meditation in the morning, and that's really basic. It's focus on the breath. So, I did 4 minutes this morning, and it just kind of sets my attention for the day and gets me to a baseline of relative calm. I live in Los Angeles, so that's relative calm.
Yeah. This is one of the biggest things that I've always talked about myself that's been a huge game changer is just meditating on a daily basis. I notice a momentum that if I do it for how many days in a row, huge benefit. And if I stop doing it for a couple of days in a row, again, a huge negative to me where there's so much stuff going on that it's so easy to get irritable and have more like this kind of underlying anxiety that just is wiped away completely when I do meditation. So it's just, I find that I react less to things and more so respond to things. And so
absolutely
it's less of an immediate processing of something and more like, okay, what just happened? All right, this is how the best way to respond to this would be.
Well, exactly. And I think, one of the things about meditation is it's daunting to people. They say, I don't have a half an hour day. In my experience, that 4 minutes is plenty. And I do a really simple breathing meditation where I do count 6 on the in breath, hold it for 6, let it out over 6, and keep it out for 6. That's physically challenging enough that your mind is focused on that. You're not wandering so much especially the keeping it out.
6 out.
No, 6 in, hold it for 6, 6 out, and hold it out for 6, which is the hardest part.
Okay.
So it's 4 counts of 6. You've exhaled and you have no breath for 6. That's the challenge.
Okay. Interesting.
But it's a super easy meditation and anyone can do it. I do it when I'm sitting in an airline seat, middle seat on a 6-hour flight. I'm doing a lot of that.
Right. And so you just do that 8 times or is that kind of?
Yeah, I'll set a timer for 5 minutes and then just, you can go to another place pretty quickly with that type of meditation because it's very focused versus just kind of relaxing where the physical part, then I'm starting to think with a breath meditation like that. I'm really focused on the breath, especially trying to keep my breath out for 6 seconds.
Right.
So it's good.
Yeah, over and over and over again too. That must be very focusing. Have you ever done any type of like Wim Hof style breathing where?
A little bit, and I've done Vipassana meditation and things like that. Look, meditation is the most exhausting thing. I'd rather go, balls out running for an hour than meditate for an hour. Yeah, it's so hard.
Especially like I was saying, when you lose momentum and you have to get back into it. That happened to me a couple of weeks ago where I was traveling a bunch again and it's just due to circumstances, I stopped doing it for 3-4 days and trying to get back into it. So I usually do about 15 to 20 minutes in the morning, just free form. And that was grueling. So much work. There was the first day back, I looked at I usually just set a timer just to see how long I go. And I'm like, that had to have been like 25 minutes. I think it was like 4 minutes and 34 seconds.
Oh, exactly. Well, and I have those times where, I'm rushed for time. I set the timer for 3 minutes and I look down and it's only been a minute. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. But what's amazing about it is, and I find this with the kids, somebody's crying, somebody's upset, just take 3 deep breaths together. We're going to do it together. And boy, everyone calms down really fast.
Yeah. This has been a very consistent thing that it's like meditation and journaling have been with all the people that I've talked to, but stress relief things that have just been so impactful yet so minimal of an input.
Yep.
So yeah, good tip. What about for sleep? How's your approach there?
As much as possible. Okay. So, it's funny. There's so much in our culture that lionizes and makes heroes out of people who sleep 3 hours a night, which first of all, I think is largely garbage. I think they sometimes sleep 3 hours a night, but second of all, that's not something to be proud of. Right. And, it's funny for me, the game changer was talking to professional athletes. I knew a guy who was a professional triathlete. I asked him one time, how much do you sleep? 12 hours a night. I was like, what? Brent Fikowski from the CrossFit Games. Brent is an animal and he's an animal in terms of performance, but he's an animal in terms of what he does off of the competition floor. And one of his things that he's really focused on is a lot of sleep with an intense routine. And this really blew my mind. So he does, goggles to eliminate the blue light spectrum for 45 minutes before bed. He does some breathing meditation. He's got blackout curtains and he wears a sleep mask and he's got white noise. This guy is optimizing his sleep routine and he's doing kind of 8 to 9 hours a night. Yeah. So I always try to get minimum of 7.5. 8 is great for me. And I'll catch up every time I can. So, I'm on the plane before that takes off, I'm asleep. So, and earplugs, that's the other thing. Brent wears earplugs. I typically don't, but, people say that's helpful as well. But tons of sleep, the more the better.
Yeah, I'm super strict. And I do eye mask every night. I think it's a game changer. I think blackout shades when I'm traveling, I don't like them because I typically don't wake up with the sun. I have these Philips Hue lights at my house where you can program them so that when the sun rises, they start turning on. And so that's more of a natural way, I think, to just wake up your body when the sun's up. But I can't get the earplugs in. I don't know.
They're uncomfortable for a while. Like I'll sleep on the plane with earplugs, but when I sleep at home, I don't use them. But it's interesting. The light one is really, I found quite impactful, and I've noticed it with the kids. That blue light just keeps them wired. Yeah. And so, my phone's on night shift. I think at 8:00, it turns off the blue light spectrum and gets to a more yellowy spectrum. That's a really cool technology. And I think we're going to find in the next 10 years, more and more homes are going to have that because it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. I've programmed all our lights in our house to go to like extreme yellow at about 8 p.m.
So cool.
And then I know okay, it's time to start winding down. Then I have my little nighttime routine. I'm the same way about sleep. It's one of the most important things to me. Start winding down, and then by 9:30 or so, the lights are off.
Well, and I think, each of the things, the pillars that we're talking about, Anthony, is so key from a long-term perspective. And when you look at people who are performing at a high level at 100 years old, unconsciously, they're often doing each of the things we're talking about. They're getting a ton of sleep. They're working out. They're eating a good diet. And so, that's really critical. It's all about the long-term for me.
Awesome. It's always a work in progress, isn't it?
Exactly. I just want to be 1% better next week than I was this week.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, Paddy, thanks for joining us. Is there anywhere that you want people to go to check out your guys' work?
Well, go to Zevia.com. You can learn about our products on that site. We're all over. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And we're in about 30,000 retail stores. So track us down. Again, soda, sparkling water, energy drinks, mixers, and soon to come, ready-to-drink tea.
Awesome. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Keto Answers podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, but even if you didn't, I would love a review. Just go over to iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and pop in a review so we can get found by more people, get better guests, and have the information that you need. So please go to iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a review. And if you're new to keto, head on over to perfectketo.com/podcast and enter your email for all our top tips and guides on getting started with the ketogenic diet. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.